Welcome back to the Sage Skills Lab, where we exist for one reason: to help turn insight into action. And today we are discussing a change in talent acquisition that could actually make TA professionals obsolete by 2027. Have you noticed that your internal talent acquisition professionals are using AI to screen resumes and CVs and schedule interviews faster than ever? But although efficiency is up, strategic, high impact hires aren't necessarily happening any faster. So, why is that? Well, AI only solves the volume problem, it doesn't fix the human variable. And according to data from Gartner, 43% of organizations are actively using AI for HR and internal recruiting. Now, the administrative backbone of your TA function, the screening, the scheduling, the initial candidate filtering, is permanently being automated. But most TA leaders are underestimating the massive behavioral shift this creates. And Gartner says that its research is actually showing that talent acquisition is splitting into a two-tier model. Now, at the baseline, AI is handling the execution at the bottom. And above that, teams are now moving into a leaner team of strategic talent advisors at the top. In other words, if you haven't redesigned what your team actually does day to day, you're operating a structure built for a world that probably no longer exists. Unfortunately, moving a TA professional from transactional hiring into strategic talent advisory isn't something easily solved just by sending them on a training course. It's really a behavioral question, and we're all fundamentally wired differently in terms of our behavioral preferences. So, unless you've been hiring for behavioral skills, it's likely that up to 40% of your current team members are likely people with process driven profiles. They thrived when the job was about volume, checklists, and linear pipelines, but sitting down with a VP of engineering or a CFO or challenging their hiring assumptions requires a completely different kind of psychological makeup. And to address the behavioral shifts, you've got to map these shifts to using precise psychometric markers. For example, a strategic advisor requires a very specific balance of assertiveness and what we call conflict comfortability. If a TA professional scores too high in cooperation, they become conflict avoidant. They'll function probably more like order takers who say yes to unrealistic hiring manager demands just to keep the peace. Let's face it, it'll clog your pipelines with some bad roles. A true advisor needs to have a moderate cooperation score and high assertiveness to be able to introduce healthy, professional friction into the business hiring standards. So, what I'm trying to say is generic upskilling won't change your employee's natural behavioral baseline, and you can't necessarily afford to guess who's wired for and who's not wired for this new world. So, to get ahead of this, there's a fundamental shift that we all need to develop as leaders right now, and that's thinking about strategic work allocation. So, in the TA world, to build this skill, here's a practical 3-column exercise that you can run with your leadership team this week. We call it the TA role audit. So, 3 columns, as I mentioned. The first column is to list every one of the tasks that your internal TA professionals currently spend time on in a typical week. Then, your second column, you want to identify which of those tasks AI is already doing or will reliably be doing within the next 12 months. And then that third column is actually to look at what remains. This is your pure human value column. It consists of consultative advice, behavioral insight, and senior stakeholder management. And your job as a leader is to look at that third column and honestly assess if your current team possesses the natural behavioral profiles to deliver that work and at the level that the business really now requires. And this brings us to our key takeaway for today. AI hasn't just changed how we recruit new talent for the organization. It's actually completely changed who we bring into this talent acquisition professional role. Efficiency is no longer the metric of a great TA professional. Influence is. So your action step for your Monday morning is to stop guessing which people on your team are actually ready to step up into an advisory role. Don't wait for a massive, months-long departmental restructure. Instead, run a low-risk, data-driven diagnostic on just a subset of your team. You can use personality profiles to remove this guesswork for your TA leaders. And if you don't have your own, just go over to TalentSage.com and check ours out. We have built the 5-step, which is the 5 super trait personality profile, and it's a rapid behavioral diagnostic that is fundamentally built on scientifically proven evidence and empirical studies. And it's using the 5-factor model to map your existing team to show you exactly who is naturally wired to be a strategic advisor today, who has the raw traits but needs targeted coaching to get there, and who is fundamentally wired for process and should probably be redeployed or given the chance to develop before they burn out. So stop risking your team's reputation on instinct and head over to talentsage.com right now, and let's run a pilot diagnostic on just 3 or 4 of your team members this week to see the data for yourself. I'll see you there, and thanks for spending time with us today.